Hey everybody, I'm going to talk about a spiritual concept today um, and break it down because otherwise these spiritual concepts sometimes get kind of vague and it's like, oh yeah, it sounds good, but what does that actually look like in real life? So, we're often told as Christians or spiritual people that to put God first. And then actually living that is a whole nother ordeal. We're not always sure how to do that or what does that look like and what does that mean exactly because we live in a world that's so opposite of the way God is asking us to live that it can get confusing and you have to kind of figure out, okay, well, what does that look like for me? So I'm going to break it down a little bit using an example specifically today around how we sometimes put relationships or family, our partner, whatever, in the first primary position that only God should be holding. And what does that look like, and how to not do that because it can really mess things up if you don't have God in first position. So what I mean by that is God is the priority. He's, first and foremost, you know, the relationship that we need to have intact and solid if you want to have the kind of life that we want to have. That has to be in place. A lot of people don't have that in place, period, or at all. And they're just living life according to the world and how it says to live it. And so I'm going to make a distinction here. If you're a spiritual person or a Christian, we put God first. Jesus needs to be in first position, which means that that's the first priority, and um, nothing else should hold that priority the way that does. So I've noticed that when I do that in my life, I get really solid with God, and then like that's the first thing I do in the morning is spend my time with Him, and then the rest of my day just goes so much smoother and my life just goes so much smoother. I notice as soon as things start getting in the way and like taking priority or I get distracted, I notice then I get overwhelmed easily and things start to not flow, and then I have too many things to do and it actually gets even worse. And that's actually kind of an indication to me now that I haven't been putting God in first position, because that's what happens when we don't do that. So specifically, I have noticed that a lot of people kind of are attached to the idea of having a partner. Um, like that's I've actually witnessed men who feel like they're not like a real man, or they're not successful, or they're not validated unless they have a woman in their life, and they're putting that as like a first priority, and it becomes an addiction to have that in place, even more so than having Jesus in that place, because only Jesus can hold that first position. If you're trying to put a woman there, a man there, your partner, your family, even your kids can become an idol before God because you're putting them first. God needs to be first, and if He's not, and you're thinking that you have to have this other thing, and you're chasing after it as though you can't live without it, that's a real sheer sign that priorities are out of whack. So only Jesus can hold that position that you're trying to put someone else in. And why? Because God's the only one who's able to fill all those places in you that are empty. And until we get solid with God in our personal life, in our still time where we're still enough to listen to Him and have that bond with Him where we can hear His guidance each day in meditation and through prayer, if we don't have that in place, then we're trying to fill that place with something else. And a lot of people try to fill it with many things. Oftentimes it is a relationship, or it's their addiction, sex, money is a big one that people use to fill that, and nothing can fulfill it. So it's always this chase for something that doesn't fulfill, and you're always on this treadmill that never satisfies. So I just want you to step back and listen to fear talking to you sometimes, because fear's the one that's trying to convince you that you have to have that partner in place. You have to have that woman in your life or you're not a real man. Is that true? Hell no. It doesn't matter whether you have a partner or not. I mean, some of the most powerful people, especially in the Bible, were single and, serving God. And it might just be for a time, but, it has to all be God guided. Because the last thing you want is the wrong partner and then to go downhill. And the last thing you want is just to keep repeating cycles of partner after partner when you're really maybe not even partner material at the moment, because you don't have Jesus solid in your life first. Because only He can fulfill, and only He's going to be able to reach those places in you that are longing for something. And if you're looking for something outside yourself to make you whole and to make you feel normal, to make you feel like you're a real man and that you're successful, then that's a sure sign that you're not successful and you're not a real man, because you're looking for something else outside of you to make you feel that way. It's only the Holy Spirit in your relationship with Jesus on the inside, especially when it's really built up and solid and you have a daily practice. And then you're so whole that you don't need to look outside yourself for anything else, because Jesus just meets all those needs when you're tight with Him. And then everything comes after that. That's the only way it's going to happen for you to have an ideal relationship that you long for. Otherwise, it's always going to fall apart, because it's based on an addiction. It's based on some weird belief you have that you have to have it. But just notice if you're doing that, if you're listening to those lies that say that you have to have that, because only Jesus can feed your soul the way no one else can. And that has to be in place first for you to be a solid individual who's sovereign, who then can go out and partner in a successful way with God's guidance. So that's my message for today. I hope that's helpful, because I know I've made that mistake and so many of us have, that it's a good reminder.